Sustainable leadership does no harm to and actively improves the surrounding environment. Andy Hargrave said that once. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Moving Forward Leadership Podcast, episode 39, How to be a Sustainable Leader with Maura Sweeney. Hey everyone, it's Scott McCarthy, your host and founder here of the Moving Forward Leadership Podcast, and welcome to a podcast designed with one goal in mind, and that's help you become a better leader. And that doesn't mean you work big business. You might work small business. You might be an entrepreneur. You might not even work in business at all. Heck, you might be a nonprofit or government, or you may even be a stay-at-home parent. It doesn't matter, because you know why? We all need leadership. And this weekly show is designed to make you that better leader, okay? I bring in the best guests that this planet has to offer in leadership and leadership practices. And we don't talk about theory, we talk about practical application of things that you can do as soon as you're done listening to this show and go out there and apply them. And that is coupled with my 20 odd years of leadership experience, with the bulk be coming from the Canadian Army. So, welcome to the best leadership show on the planet, as far as I'm concerned. And if you're listening to this for probably the 39th time, you probably agree as well. So welcome everybody. Before we dive into today's show, I just want to quickly talk about the Moving Forward Leadership Mastermind. And that is my free Facebook group we have out there. And in that group, you're going to find something super special, something you won't find anywhere else out there. And that is, you're going to find all the guests of the Moving Forward Leadership Podcast. Well, I shouldn't say all the guests. I invite all the guests. And you're going to find about 80% of the guests in there. So people like George Penyak, Heather Younger, Keisha Rivers, John Conrad, and so on and so forth. They're in there, and we're all discussing leadership. And I'm in there, posting pretty well daily and putting up different questions, doing Facebook Live videos, and we will be soon doing training calls via Zoom. And guess what, guys? This is all free. So, my question is, why aren't you there if you're not? If you are, awesome. But if you're not, why aren't you? You have nothing to lose. Simply just go to movingforwardleadership.com/mastermind, and it's going to take you right to the group, just like that. Anyway, I digress. So today we're talking about sustainable leadership with an awesome guest. Maura has an extensive leadership experience, from being an operations manager for an executive search firm to eventually becoming an entrepreneur and running her own business, where now she's an author, a podcaster, Huffington Post contributor, and she enjoys traveling around and basically telling her story and her ideology regarding sustainable leadership to anybody and everybody who's willing to listen. So it's definitely great to have someone with such a vast background behind them and such a passion for this. You're going to hear us have an amazing conversation all about sustainable leadership. So you're probably wondering what we're talking about in sustainable leadership. And I don't want to take away too much of our thunder, but what we're referring to is basically setting up your team for success after you leave the organization, and how you develop your people and everything that ties into those types of things. So for today's show, you can find the show notes at movingforwardleadership.com/39. Again, that's movingforwardleadership.com/39. And you'll get all the show notes there for today's show. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, hope you enjoyed the show. And here's my interview talking about sustainable leadership with Maura Sweeney. All right. Welcome to the Moving Forward Leadership Podcast. It's great to have you on.
Scott, thank you for having me on. This is a great format for things that are very near and dear to me.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And, it's great to finally get you on because we had a couple of scheduling conflicts, including a nasty cold that did not agree with me for some reason. I don't know why.
Oh, funny. I know, both of us, right, on both ends. But hey, glad to know we're finally getting together for this interview now.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things I like to do with all my guests is get them to give just a brief, background on who they are, how they got to where they are today, just so the audience can have a bit of understanding of that. So why don't you dive in there first?
Okay, I will try to be brief because I have lived on this earth for several decades, but grew up in New Jersey, right outside of New York City. The backstory was that my family expected me to be a lawyer like my great-grandfather. I went all through college, got a political science degree at Boston College, headed on to law school. Halfway through law school, I thought, oh my gosh, I am so not happy and I don't want to live in New Jersey and New York. I left law school and with the desire to really find my niche in life that I could be passionate about. And it was not law. So I spent 2 years as, what's the matter? You're laughing.
It was just funny the way you said, oh, it was not law.
It wasn't. It truly, if you see pictures of me, you'd say, okay, this lady did not want law. But, and of course it sounded like a good thing, but for me, there was no life in it. So I spent 2.5 years as a very high-level executive recruiter. I spent about a decade working for 2 national telecommunications corporations in management, where I really honed my skills that I loved, which is identifying great people, training people, finding out what their talents were, and then building these award-winning working cultures. And cultures that really, in spite of, let's say, restrictions or limitations we had that helped us do so well. One thing, I was in my mid to late 20s. We had the top office in the country. I was offered, fast track moves up, but I really wanted to live in Florida, which is where my husband and I were. I spent several years after I had my daughter as a homeschooling mother, helped my husband build a very successful and profitable computer rep business. And then at midlife, after our daughter was getting ready to go away to college, I thought, you know what, this selling computer stuff, it was profitable, but it was not purposeful. And that was really where I launched out doing what was in my heart from the time I was a young child. And those things involved talking about leadership, traveling the world, being an idea person that could help others see themselves through a new light, and actually provide this, I would say, a space in the marketplace of ideas, not just here in the United States, but really on a global level, so that people could begin thinking about themselves, their own personal leadership, their self-development from a better perspective. And in so doing, I would be helping to create a better society as a whole. So these days, I'm an author, a podcaster like you. I'm an international speaker. Thanks so much for having me on your show. This is probably, I don't know, maybe I've done over 300 of them. I know I do other things. Oh, and I have a course on emotional intelligence that helps people really be a worker from the inside, to think about what the backdrop of their minds are, how they have created narratives in their own lives, how they could become more personally aware, and how they could develop themselves into being their biggest, best, and highest version of self. So I'm sure there are other things I could add, but I think that gives you an idea.
That's a pretty pretty diverse background, I must say. From running your own business to homeschooling and now globetrotting. It's really neat, and that's one of the cool things that I get to enjoy with this. I shouldn't say job, but this podcast. I get to meet all kinds of really interesting people like yourself with all kinds of neat backgrounds, and yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Well,
so,
thanks. I feel the same way about meeting you. Yeah. I've never had anybody in the Canadian military before, so this is equally good for me.
Well, we're not here to talk about me, though. The audience don't want to listen to that, I'm sure.
Gosh.
So we're here today to talk about your whole philosophy about sustainable leader and being a sustainable leader and sustainable leadership. Can you just give us like a brief overview on whole ideology of that, like a 30,000 foot view of it, and then
Yes.
we'll kind of dive into it as the show goes along.
Sure. I love to use this word sustainable leadership because a lot of people are like the flash in the pan. They may get a job, they may get a promotion, they may have a quote unquote moment in the sun when they're the man, the woman, and they've got the power. And the reason why I use the word sustainable in front of leadership is many times people become very self-centered, very egocentric, and they don't think about other people in their wake. They don't think about the outcomes and the outgrowth of things they say, things they do, decisions they make. So I always love when I talk about leadership to talk about leadership from the position of being sustainable, meaning endurable. Let's say you're running a company, or you're a director of something, and then all of a sudden your company goes out of business or you get fired. Are you truly a leader, or were you just a so-called leader because somebody gave you that title? And the idea of sustainable leadership really works on the internal attributes, self-knowledge, self-development, and character of anyone who's looking to be a person of substance that other people will look to, honor, respect, trust, and follow.
That makes absolute sense, and I feel like you're preaching to the choir with me, because that's one of the core things I truly believe in. Because as a military officer, military background, I change jobs like every 2 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like every 2 years, I started my current position in July 2016, and guess what? This summer in July, I'm moving on again. And one of the core things which I always believed in since I've been in this role, in this career, is that whatever I do must last beyond me. And I guess that's kind of what you're getting at with the sustainable leadership ideology.
Yes, because you want to know how embarrassing I think it is when people do things that in the moment either feel good or are self-centered and self-serving, and then 6 months down the line, 2 years down the line, they're afraid of running into the same people they maybe stuck in the back or did something foolish. A real leader is somebody that is going to stand out and is going to be known in their character all the time as being a person that you could trust and follow.
Yeah, for sure. Get it. So with that, there's got to be definitely some specific internal qualities that are required for a leader to be a sustainable leader. Can you hit on those and what some of those might be?
Yeah, there were 3 that came in mind for tonight's interview, and I usually focus in on these when I do leadership presentations abroad, and I just use the same points when I spoke here at a very large financial corporation last week. The first is called dignity. Now, this is, to me, is so obvious, Scott, but I'm telling you, in our culture, people don't think this way. Dignity is something everybody wants to be treated with dignity by other people, meaning they want to be respected by others. But dignity actually has to do with one's own bearing, their conduct, their speech, everything that they do, the way they carry themselves. If a person wants to be respected by other people, they have to start with self-respect. So the question is, all right, how do I carry myself? What do I talk about when I'm in public? Am I going to be trashing people? If I'm a guy, am I going to be speaking poorly of women? Or if I'm a woman, and let's say am I going to be making some really stupid remarks? Am I going to dress appropriately? Am I going to look when I walk out the door like I respect myself enough so that other people would look to me and think, oh, this is a person I need to listen to? And that is the first thing that I think it's like, I almost want to say it's leadership 101. Do you carry yourself in a manner that shows that you respect yourself? Because generally, people's respect from others will usually start when we respect ourselves. So that's the beginning right there.
Oh, yeah. I hear you. And the second one?
All right. The second one, I realized this is something that, again, to me, it's, I would say it's part of who I am, but people don't always think about it because we don't always talk about it, and it's integrity. So integrity, I think of the word integrity means it's like you're whole, you're entire and you're complete. But on another level, is it a person that has moral and ethical principles, not some that they pretend to believe in when they're in front of a certain group, but that if you move them somewhere else, if you put them in a different venue, if you move them to another group of people, another peer group, another set of friends, they will still be that same person with the same morals, with the same ethical principles, and with the same amount of honesty. And I never realized this. This is so strange. I left my corporate career many years ago, and I happened to be driving one day in the car. I'm always thinking, like, where do I have to go speak next? And I'm always like processing new ideas. And something came to me that was so basic, but one of the reasons why I was able to manage the way that I did with other people by always respecting them and always getting them to follow me is that I was a person of integrity. I never would use a strong arm on people. I never wanted to use power over people. I never wanted to bully or belittle people. It's not in my nature to do so. And then I thought, my gosh, at one point I had 3 offices, 3 managers, maybe a staff of 75 people. And I was always the same way. And people would follow, they would trust me. And I realized now I was able to be that kind of a manager that always would uplift people, that didn't have to pull my weight around in order to get things done. And it was because people knew they could trust me, and they knew they could trust me because I was a person of solid integrity.
I think, honestly, for me, integrity is like the cornerstone of leadership, because with that goes credibility.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't have integrity, you're not going to have credibility. And if you don't have credibility, you don't have the ability to influence your people to get what you need done.
Absolutely, especially when you're asking people to do something maybe they've never done before, or to step out on a ledge. And if people don't trust you, if they know that they can't depend on you, they're not going to go there. But if they do know you're going to go with them and that your word is your bond, that is so powerful.
Yeah. No, integrity is absolutely crucial for anybody in any leadership role, in life in general, really, as the way I see it. So you mentioned there was 3 different aspects. So what would be the third?
I think this is really important, and I think it's often overlooked. And this one I call advocacy. Advocacy, it's like speaking or writing in defense or support of another. That would be the definition. And the picture that comes to mind, remember the old-fashioned megaphones?
Oh, yes.
Right? Okay, you yell something in there. So let's say you're an advocate. Most people will stand up maybe for themselves, or they want to defend themselves. But a true leader will not just advocate for their own interests. They'll also be the kind of person that will see someone else and think, wow, that person's really done a great job. Let me talk them up to other people. Let me reference something good that they did. Let me cite them for great work or a wonderful skill or a wonderful accomplishment. Or at the same time, advocacy also works in another regard. Let's say you're in a position when someone else is being taken advantage of, or someone else is being treated in, let's say, in a negative fashion. An advocate is somebody who's big enough as a leader to step in on another person's behalf and speak and give voice to maybe where someone can't do. And I think that is so powerful when people know that you're in their court, that you watch out for others, that you will uplift others, that you'll promote others, that you'll celebrate others rather than cutting them down or being jealous of them. Whoa, that is so powerful in terms of getting people to come on board and to come along with you, regardless of whether or not you have a title. It's very, very powerful.
No, yeah, all makes sense. I love it because, you know, ultimately as a leader, you have to fight for your people. You have to fight on their behalf, because in the end, they take care of the business, the day-to-day business for your behalf. So you have to look out for them in the long run. So
you're right. And you know, and now that you're just saying this, you brought something to mind. When people know you're watching out for their best interests, you have their loyalty and you also have their energy. When people don't think someone's watching out for them, it's as if the wind is taken out of their sails. They give less, they expect less, they're not motivated, they're not charged up, they're not creative, they're not willing to take risks. But when when people know that someone has got their best interest in mind and really is their advocate, they just put so much more of themselves and their loyalty behind that other individual. And it's very, very powerful. It's powerful individually, but it's also powerful for a larger group.
Oh, it's exponentially more
It
powerful.
is. It is.
And I've seen it go both ways. So I can tell from firsthand experience, it is exponentially more powerful when the people that are following, or under a leader believe that they have their best interests in mind. You see people starting, like you said, go out on a limb, starting to actually perform. Why? Because if not, they're like, well, why? They don't care what I do. I'm just going to sit here, put in the absolute bare minimum that needs to come out and carry on. And maybe in my off time that there's nothing to do, I'm just going to start surfing for a better job elsewhere.
Exactly.
I hate it here.
And then, that self where they don't respect themselves in their job, it becomes almost like the self-fulfilling prophecy. Yeah. And so you constantly it's like the law of diminishing returns. And you're right, I agree with you. To be the opposite as a leader, it works exponentially. It's like everybody starts getting helium in the collective balloon, and everybody ends up reaching higher levels of performance and creativity and innovation and energy. It's exciting, and it's a high for everybody.
Mm-hmm. So no doubt in the idea of sustainable leadership, there's definitely a requirement for influence and the ability to influence others. How does it tie in truly to sustainable leaders?
Influence? Well, I want to use this word from John C. Maxwell. Everybody, I'm sure, knows of him. And I love this because this talks about influence. And he says leadership isn't about titles or flowcharts. And isn't that generally how people think? They sort of think in a 2D way. Yeah. My name's on paper. I got the title, I got the business card. It's not about the titles or the flowcharts. It's about one life influencing another. One life influencing another. And that word influence, it's almost one of those things it's not tangible. You can't see it like a 3D desk or a wall, but it's intangible. It's powerful. It's the unseen energy that draws people to a person, and also allows that leader of influence to almost create this environment like a wave where other people join in. I'm reminded of something when I think about influence and how important it is in being a leader. A couple of years ago, I had to speak several times here in the Tampa Bay area, actually, I think in all of Florida, to what were called, volunteer directors. I had no idea how many volunteer directors there are that it takes to make our county and the state of Florida work. So I'm speaking to several of them, and they said to me one day, Maura, you have no idea of how important the word influence is until you have no money to give to people. And when you have to think about this, that's absolutely. When you realize that your influence is so powerful. If you can't say to somebody, you're not going to get your paycheck or I'm going to fire you, but how you actually have to come up with very creative ways to energize people to get something done or to work for a cause or to work together on an event. And I thought, what an interesting picture that was. Imagine energizing people without having any means of paying them. That is a really strong leader, and it comes from the power of influence, and that comes from your vision, your ability to capture people's imaginations, to be a dynamic person that knows how to take a variety of personalities and put them all together in a box or in an environment and have everybody recognize their value, their worth, and their contributions and have them work toward a greater whole. Extremely powerful. And we don't talk about things like that, but that's really the power behind leadership, is knowing that you can influence the lives, the thoughts, the imaginations, the activities, and the I would say the pursuits of others.
Yeah. No, actually I did a complete other podcast episode with a guest named Brent Kelly, and it was all around influence, and that's the only thing we talked about for about 40 minutes or so. So I totally understand what you're saying, and it's funny you mentioned the money thing. Oh, money is the influence. It just happens to be a tangible way to influence people.
Right.
But once you take that tangible good away, then yeah, it's a whole different ballgame and a whole new skill set that's required from someone in a leadership role to be able to get the job done at the end of the day.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because here's what I always think about. Oftentimes when people have a title and they think they're a leader because they have a title, if it's only a title, I think about it being the equivalent of a book cover, a facade. But when I think about influence and having all those internal qualities, like I just mentioned before, the dignity, the integrity, the advocacy for others, that rock solid character, now what you have is a 3D version of yourself. There's grit, there's depth to who you are. So I remember this when I was in recruitment. We would not only recruit very high level people, but at some points we also had to work with clients who had great positions, great careers, and then lost their job and therefore lost their title. And it was very interesting to see people who lived according to their title, but really when the titles were removed, questioned their own power, their personal power. And a lot of them really needed to almost redevelop it so that when they had to go out looking for new positions, they needed to have the confidence, the skill set, and those, I would say, those personal attributes that when they went in for an interview, people would say, oh, I could feel it. This person knows their stuff.
That's really interesting. And as you're talking about the whole title thing and people losing their jobs and hence losing your titles, I was kind of reflecting back and how that affects me as a military officer. And it's funny because we basically have two things at play in the military. One, which everybody knows, is your rank, right? Mm-hmm. And the common, actually misunderstood thing was that the people believe as you go higher you go up in rank, the more power you get and the more ability you have to influence and all that jazz, which is probably 60% true. And the other aspect of it is, our title, or as we refer to as our position. So as an example, my rank is major. So that is the beginnings of the senior it's the senior ranks of the officer corps. And my last job, which I left in July 2016, I was the average rank within the organization I was in. And my title was irrelevant. I turned to my next job, which is the one I'm in now, and I am the commander of that organization. You see the difference? So, one day I'm on the bottom end of the totem pole, and then I changed jobs, literally actually walked across the street to a new building, and now I am completely flipped over on the top end of the totem pole. And we go through this our entire careers.
That's very interesting.
Right. And it's all based on where you are. Your rank obviously has a major component to play in it, but it all depends on where you're being employed at within the specific position you are. So honestly, you could be a full colonel and your ability to influence will be small one day, and then you may command a brigade, which is like 4,000 people, and then your ability to influence goes exponentially larger. Or you may even go into a chief of staff position, and then your ability to influence gets really high as well, but it's in a different context. So
right.
No, influence, the ability to influence people I think is probably something which is not regarded in high enough esteem out there. It needs to be taken a little bit more seriously, because people, it changes and it can easily change, and it doesn't change you. Those people that leave their jobs or have been fired or whatever, it doesn't change you. They shouldn't, in my opinion, they just feel that they should be, sad or they're relegated or whatever. It's just, things have changed. You're just shifting, and we kind of go through that every 2 years.
Well, and that's very good. It probably keeps you very fresh, right? And evolving.
that is definitely one benefit of the way we do things is it keeps fresh eyes, and actually I had an example of that pop up at work today of someone who just showed up to my unit this past summer and now brought something to the light, and it's like, wow, I didn't see that because I've been here for almost 2 years now, but they've been here since the summer. However, the other side of that coin is what we give up is corporate knowledge. Our corporate knowledge turnover is, incredibly high because people are changing jobs anywhere from 2 to 4 years.
Oh, that's interesting. But now, even as I'm listening to you and trying to imagine you in different positions, did you mention at one point like chief of staff or something?
Yep.
All right. There may be people listening today that may not have any title. Maybe they don't even aspire to a title. Maybe their ego doesn't even want a title, but they do understand and appreciate influence. So with that in mind, that means that no matter where people are, they can learn how to carry themselves with great dignity, to be a person of integrity, which means they're highly trustworthy, and also to be an advocate. They can conceivably be someone who is working, let's say, on a special project and doesn't even have a title or an awareness as far as everybody else is concerned that looks like it's anything important. But because of the way they carry themselves, because of their personal reputation, the way in which others see and view and trust them, sometimes their one word of advice, their input can end up changing dramatic directions that a company or an organization or anything else is going to take. And I think that's something important for people to know. That could be, with peer groups. It could be in clubs. It could be in organizations. It can be at work. Not like this is one thing with me. When I was in corporate life, there were several opportunities I had to start traveling and going and moving and all this, and I really didn't care to do it. I was very happy and busy enough developing the people that I had with me. And so there are other people that are called to be people of high influence, but high influence does not always have to be the person who's got the big title or even the big office. And yet you could have someone in a big office with a big title who will call on someone as if that person is their most trusted advisor. And I think we need to get people thinking about things like that. There are some people, they don't need to be in the forefront, but they really appreciate the fact that they can think, they could see ahead, they can look at dangers, they can make good suggestions, and that their input is so highly valuable and valued by other people within their realm or their organization.
No, I completely agree. And honestly, as you're talking, I can foresee, I picture people working in nonprofits, people working in volunteer groups, and like you said, friends, we all have those different friends that you go to for various reasons, right? People come to me for tech advice because I'm a little bit of a tech junkie,
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Because that's your area of expertise and people know it and they trust you.
Yeah, so I think we could probably talk all evening on this, but what I'd like to do is just change gears a little bit, and obviously, influence is a big part, and you talked and you kind of hinted at mindset, and I'm really interested in your thoughts about how can a leader, basically establish a mindset for sustainable leadership within themselves, and not additionally within the organization as a whole.
Very good. And these are things I talk about when I'm speaking with young leaders or at universities or even at corporations, because so much of leadership starts from within. Oftentimes people are waiting for somebody to say, oh, we're going to grant you this title or we're going to promote you, right? They're waiting for the world to do it to them. Here's what I do. I'm such a firm believer in this, that everything, including my e-course, is all about the theater of the mind, how we think and how we operate from within, because our thoughts create things and our ongoing thoughts create ongoing experiences. So here's what I usually tell people in every situation. It doesn't matter where you are, but if you seem like or feel like you're in a challenging spot, you have to always ask yourself this question: am I a victim or am I a beneficiary? A victim mindset always will think, oh my gosh, the world is happening to me. It's attacking me. It's coming at me from every side. I don't know where to hide myself. I'm totally vulnerable. And if people look at any situation or any perceived problem or any issue, let's say a conflict they have with someone else, I always invite them first, go back into your own mind and your mindset and just say, okay, am I viewing myself as a victim here? Or am I willing to see myself and choose to see myself as a beneficiary? Because someone who sees themselves as a beneficiary, and the word beneficiary has bene or benefit built right in, meaning good, they're going to see a good outcome for themselves and a good outcome for the greater good. And if people could train themselves before responding, before reacting, before crying, before screaming, before saying something they don't want to say to somebody else, to answer that single question and say, am I a victim or am I a beneficiary? In choosing to be a beneficiary, you automatically put your mind in the position of a leader. Now you're in the driver's seat. Now your mind, which is going to create outcomes, is actually opening itself to feelings of not being small, not being underrated, but instead being a problem solver, someone who could resolve issues, someone who'll be creative, someone who can answer wisely, rather than just out of emotions. And that is so incredibly powerful. What makes it more powerful, though, Scott, is to get into the habit of seeing oneself as a beneficiary, because it's that position that always helps people. It doesn't mean life is going to be easy, but it helps people ride atop the waves rather than feeling like they get caught into tsunamis and they're just flailing around in the ocean somewhere. So that's a really big piece.
Yeah, absolutely. I always say every situation has both a negative and positive connotation to it. You just got to look for it, and I think that's
Right.
a lot of what you're kind of getting at here today.
Exactly. And you know what? If you're looking for the negative, guess what you're going to find?
You're going to find what you look for, right? It doesn't matter.
And if you're going to look, and if you're expecting the positive, you're going to find it too. And here's another thing that's really big on leadership. And I've noticed this over and over again in my own life, but I discovered it years ago as a child reading biographies. People would end up approaching and really arriving at their greatest summits in life as a result of overcoming challenges. So think about the problem you have. If you think this is going to work out well, then your mind is going to start being more energized toward working toward resolutions. But your mind's also going to put you in a position to take new challenges and to be more creative and to be more courageous and to apply yourself better and to ultimately use your challenge to overcome life circumstances and build yourself into that bigger person, which translates into the personal power you carry later on because it's more confidence.
Make absolute sense to me for sure. And it's pretty incredible. Some of the people that I've talked to throughout doing this podcast and the life challenges that they've overcome to get to where they are. Sometimes I actually, it's crazy to sound, jealous because I don't have any. Not to say life's been a nice smooth ride or anything like that, but I don't have anything absolutely crazy. For example, one of the previous episodes, a gentleman by the name of Andrew O'Brien had to, go to court and testify against his own mother for murdering her husband. So,
whoa!
Yeah, that's probably one of the toughest ones that I've heard of thus far.
That's maybe you didn't come to this world for a lot of life drama, but that requires a lot. Oof.
Yeah. Yep, and he attempted suicide, and now he's running an extremely successful business online. And doing great things for a lot of people out there. So it's pretty incredible, right? Some of the life challenges people have overcome and now the heights that they get to.
Yes, I agree. Now, in my case, I always felt like I was brought up to be something I didn't want to be. I really felt like I was miscast, meaning, somebody was grooming me for a Hollywood show that I didn't like. I didn't like anything having to do with the plot. And so in my case, I really had to take years of work to step out of the model that I was brought up under, through my early 20s, and really help cast myself in a way that felt authentic for me. And so mine was totally different from that last person you interviewed, but I'll tell you what, when
Still not easy.
It's tough because everybody's got their own mental baggage, their own emotions. They've got to deal with their own ways of looking at things. But the process that happens as a result of it is that we take that with us as part of our personal tool bag. I look at you and I'm hearing military, and there's so many things you probably are unaware of that you carry with you because of your military training and experience. I wasn't in the military, but I know what it's like to have to work hard to become the person that I always was within. And it takes a lot of courage and confidence, but I use that when speaking in different places, even overseas. And people will say to me, which is interesting, Maura, this is even overseas, several have said to me, Maura, when you stepped on that stage, even if I didn't understand a word you spoke, I knew you understood me because you carried it in everything that you exuded. And so these kinds of things carry with us. And that's where our challenges in life actually help equip us for leadership, sometimes in unwitting ways.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, it's not to say I haven't faced challenging situations before.
Oh, I'm sure you have.
But, yeah. So I'd like to change gears, a couple more times here. Something that I've, been thinking at the back of my mind. I'm a huge proponent for delegation in as a leader. Like that is one of my core aspects that I use all the time. How does delegation in your mind support the concept of sustainable leadership?
Oh, I love it. I should tell you the first story I did when I was a recruiter. I delegated so much that I remember after the meeting, I had nothing left on my desk. And I thought, wait a minute, you better give me something back. But then I'll tell you this, when I was in sales management, branch management, whatever, and managing other managers, here's what I would do. And it's so powerful all the way around because I would start by finding out with people around me what they like to do, what they had an interest in, and where their aptitudes lay. And little by little, I would give them something, and I'd give them some direction, maybe ask them to watch me, and then I'd give them a project, and then I'd ask them to come back and show me what they did, and we'd talk about it. The more I delegated, the more people loved their jobs. They felt appreciated. They felt empowered.
Oh, yeah.
They felt strengthened. They felt more loyal. And it is such, I'm so glad you asked that question because here's another thing. When a leader can delegate, it means that leader could turn their back. That leader could leave the premises, and that leader knows that everything will get done well, not just because people know how to do it in theory, but because there's part in the delegation of, I am trusting you as an individual and your character to get it done and to get it done well, as if I were overseeing you, even though I'm not there. That is so powerful in leadership.
It's funny that the opening story you mentioned there.
I thought it was hysterical.
Something similar, not quite exactly the same, but something similar. I was sitting with one of my directs and one of my troop commanders, and we're discussing. And he looked at me and goes, "You know what, boss?" I'm like, "What's that?" He's like, "You didn't give me enough rope to hang myself with." And I kind of did the double take. I'm like, "Use me?" And he's like, "No, I can go bungee jumping."
Oh my gosh. But isn't that fun though? In the delegation, you actually find out how much people want, how much they're willing to do. And that growth, people appreciate that. I mean, I'm not going to tell you everybody does. Not everybody has the same energy level or the same desire to keep moving and trying something new. But for those who do, it's fantastic and it's fun.
It goes back to the core principle of knowing your people, right? So some people you can go ahead and say, okay, this is your task. Just go, come back to me when you need something and or it's done. But other people need very strict confines so that they know their arcs. They need to know very strict timelines because they're driven that way. And it goes back just to core principle of knowing your people. But for me, honestly, my whole reasons for being highly supportive of delegation is because I don't want the organization to stop functioning because suddenly I'm not there. Right?
Yes. And that's right. I totally agree. Keep talking. And I'll agree afterwards.
Suddenly I feel like it's turning into my episode, but no.
Not at all.
But it's because, I could be tied up in a meeting and a decision needs to be happening. And if, right or wrong, I don't care. If I'm tied up in a meeting, whoever has the ability to make the decision, make the call. We'll come back and we'll deal with the consequences if it's not necessarily the exact right call. But you know what? That turns into a learning opportunity too for the other member. Or, I go away on holidays, the place can't grind to a halt for a week because I'm on holidays. It has to keep moving or things are going to happen. And if you're in business, people, companies lose contracts because people aren't properly delegated because the person who, it needs to make the call isn't there to make the call. And then, the potential client says, you know what, never mind, I'm going to one of the competitors because you guys can't get your act together.
You're right. That's a real skill set to know who to delegate to, how much, to what extent, because there are certain people who are afraid to delegate. And because of that, they micromanage. And then people, let's say when they are absent, when they have left the premises, those other people don't know what to do because they've never been entrusted to do. So it requires as much on the part of the leader as it does for the willing supporters of that leader or whatever, those people that are being developed. And not everybody is willing to let things go little by little. I remember one time I had one of the aptitudes I had in corporate was developing managers that went on to do a lot more. But when they were like, let's say first level managers, I could remember, Scott, on a few times where I think, oh my gosh, I want these people to learn, but I hope I don't lose my own job as they're learning. There was one sales manager working for me who believed everything every sales rep told him. And I used to say to him, Dean, they're pulling your leg. And I'm looking, where the sales results are going down. And I thought, oh my gosh, am I going to lose my job by giving him rope? But you know what happened? That young manager, the light bulb went on. He realized certain people were pulling his leg and he learned firsthand. And then after that, it was like he just arose to a whole new level. And for me, it was so exciting. But that's like the what do you want to call it? The push and pull of how much do I delegate and can I do it? But I'll tell you, I had people from years afterwards saying, Maura, thank you for giving me the space to try new things, even to make mistakes, and for allowing me to grow. It's so powerful to an organization. It's powerful to the members, and it's powerful to the greater good. If done the right way.
This is another topic we could probably talk all night for, but unfortunately, we're starting to butt up on time, Maura. I do got one last question for you, and this is a question which I ask all my guests. What makes a great leader?
I'm going to say vision. Because that's my thing. A great leader has a vision for something bigger than himself or herself, and then they have the capacity and the passion to share it, repeat it, promote it, convey it in such a way that other people catch the vision, find themselves in the midst of it, and apply themselves to it. So that's my short answer: vision.
I could almost foresee it coming, really. And it ties into sustainable leadership, right? And I have a lot of experience with this just due to the nature of the way we do business. And, you show up to a job, you have a vision, you set the conditions for success, and then you prepare to turn over and you move on. And that's what it all means down in the end. Right. Maura, thank you for coming out and talking to myself and the audience all things about sustainable leadership. At this time, how can people reach out to you? Where can they find you? All your resources.
Okay.
Feel free to give yourself a shameless plug.
Shameless plug. Well, let me tell you, the easiest way people can reach me if they are listeners, like tonight they're listening to your podcast, is look for me, Maura Sweeney, Living Happy Inside Out. That's the name of my podcast, Maura Sweeney, Living Happy Inside Out. They're 10 minutes in length. I ask reflective questions to get people thinking about something on the inside and in their head. Then I'll tell them a story. Then I'll give them a call to action. It's really great stuff. The other way they can reach me is go directly to my website, maura4u.com. So it's M as in Mary, AURA, the number 4, the letter U.com. They could find books. They could find my e-course there, which is really great if for people that really want to change the way they think and become their more powerful self. And if they want to hire me to come speak to their organization, they could find me as a speaker, and hopefully you will use one of those links. So, Scott, I want to thank you for giving me an opportunity to share. I know you are passionate about leadership, and for what I'm doing today on a national and international level is I want to see people see themselves as persons of influence and leaders with or without a title so that we may find a far better society than the one we're living in right now. So thanks for having me.
That is a complete perfect mix with my vision of the Moving Forward Leadership podcast. As the audience knows, it's for anybody and everybody. It doesn't matter who you are, where you're at in your life or organization or whatever. We all need leadership, right? And,
absolutely.
For the audience out there, don't worry about remembering all those links. Just remember this one, and that's movingforwardleadership.com/4040. And in the show notes, that's where you're going to find the show notes. And in the show notes, you're going to get all the links to everything that Maura mentioned and all of her social network profiles and all that jazz. So just swing by there, and we'll hook you up. For the audience, stick by. This isn't any episode. As you know, I do my key takeaways for my interview with Maura. So stay by. Maura, again, thank you for coming out. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I enjoyed immensely the conversation we just had.
Same here, Scott. I hope we could stay in touch. Take care. Bye.
Absolutely. Take care. Hey, everybody. I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation that I had with Maura. If you couldn't tell, I certainly did. And this episode probably is going to go over my usual time of goal of around 50 minutes. But I think it was well worth it in the end. And especially you do, because if you're at this point listening to it, then you obviously thought it was worth it in the end. Anyway, here are my takeaways from my interview there with Maura. And the first one is the power of influence. And we had such a conversation on that itself. Probably could have been a podcast episode, right? As you know. But you can't deny the power of influence that is required as a leader. And you have to go ahead and develop that ability. And unfortunately, influence kind of gets a bad rap, right? A lot of people think of influence in a negative connotation. Don't. Think about how you can influence for the betterment of your people, your organization, your mission, and yourself ultimately. Not to say that you need to go out and make everything better for yourself. Again, that whole negative connotation to it. But make life easier for yourself so that you can lead better that way. Anyway, the second key takeaway, victim or beneficiary mindset. All right, and it goes back to that example, as I said, every situation you have a negative connotation or a positive one. So you just have to look for the positive. Look for the positive, you'll find the positive. See how you're going to benefit from this situation. You're going to find that way to benefit from that situation, okay? It's all about mindset. And then final thing, delegation. As you know, I'm a huge proponent for delegation. And in my mind, it's a cornerstone for being a sustainable leader. The more you're able to delegate, the more you're able to put down to your subordinates and other people in the organization, that enhances your ability to set the organization up for success for the time you're not there, whether that is just for a day, a couple of hours, a week's worth of holidays, or when you leave the organization. Okay? The end goal for a leader is to set up the organization for success so that the leader doesn't have to be there for it to be successful. Keep that in mind. All right, folks. So again, thanks to Maura for coming out on the show. I thoroughly enjoyed chatting with her again. And thank you. Thank you for listening. And if you truly enjoy the show, remember R², S². Rate and review to give more visibility to the show so more people will find it, listen to it, and learn from its lessons. S, share and subscribe. Share because you love it. Subscribe so that you don't miss an episode. All right, folks. Remember, keep pushing, keep trying, keep moving forward. Take care now.